It's time to have your say. Welcome back to the Q&A. Ask SCW. We'll be answering your questions in the wrestling community on WWE, AEW, and much, much more straight after this. Coming up in today's show, going to be talking about those NXT releases, which was the most surprising. We're going to be talking about the change to the WrestleMania Backlash main event. Who is MJF going to bring in to take on Wardlow? And as well as that, going to be talking about Double or Nothing, which will be our opening topic. So, plenty to dive into here today. But if you'll be involved on the next episode of Ask SCW, then drop one question in the comments below with the hashtag AskSCW. I know to include it in the next episode, as well as giving you a shout out. And of course, you can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all should be going up on your screen right about now, and you can give me a question on there. But without further ado, let's get on with our first question this week, which actually isn't written down, but it comes from Scott Retro Wrestling, of course a great wrestling YouTuber, asking what matches I think will be on Double or Nothing this year. And a great question to kick things off as well. I had done a fantasy booking video previously on how I would book Double or Nothing, but I never give my opinion on what actual matches I think we're going to get. And of course, we already know the main event, it is official after Dynamite last week. We've got the AEW World Championship of Hangman Adam Page defending against CM Punk. But the big question is, what other matches are going to be on this show? We're looking at storyline direction of what we've got so far. I think we could literally go with these next few matches I think are safe bets, and then towards the end of this question, I'll give a few perhaps wild ones that I think could be on the horizon. But the safe bets then, I think, for the AEW Women's World Championship, I think we've got Thunder Rosa going to be facing Serena Deeb. Thunder Rosa was facing the TV screen at a weird angle, as every wrestler usually does watching a wrestling show. This past week on Dynamite, watching Serena Deeb defeat Hikaru Shida in that Philly street fight. So I think that leaves Shida to go off into the Owen Hart Foundation tournament. Serena Deeb, I think, makes her #1 contender. She's not in that tournament, so I think Deeb will be going against Thunder Rosa. Of course, MJF will eventually realise that, well, if other people can't do the job for him, he will have to do it himself. It will be MJF against Wardlow. We can expect a mixed tag team match, Scorpio Sky and Paige Van Zandt going against Sammy Guevara and Tay Conti. Of course, we've got the finals of the Owen Hart Cup. It's hard to predict who would actually be in those finals at the moment, not seeing any of the brackets here, but if I had to predict, for the women's side, I think it would be the Dr. Britt Baker against Toni Storm. On the men's side, possibly Jeff Hardy against Adam Cole could be a potential one we could get. As well as that, also, we will get Eddie Kingston, Santana, and Ortiz against the Jericho Appreciation Society in some format. They seem to be happy with the 3-on-5 at this particular moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if it became 5-on-5 at one point. Maybe it could be a Stadium Stampede match. We've had it for the last couple of years for the Double or Nothing shows, but of course, we're in Las Vegas this year. We're not actually going to be in Jacksonville for this, so it'd be interesting to see what they could do. Maybe it could be the Blood and Guts could be actually brought into this show for that. It'd be interesting to see if that would be the placement for it. Of course, that'd be around a full calendar year since we last had that match as well. So that could be a good way to bring actually the Blackpool Combat Club into that, because of course last year John Moxley and Eddie Kingston, they were on the same page. They seem to be in different groups and different stuff now, but perhaps it could be a way to transition the storyline after Double or Nothing for the pro wrestlers of the Blackpool Combat Club against the sports entertainers of the Jericho Appreciation Society. But that's more fantasy booking. That's more, I guess, what could happen at this point, because a couple of my other predictions at this moment are probably a bit wilder as we go along, because of course expect the Young Bucks and Red Dragon to find a way. If they can be on the same page, they'll probably have some form of match to either against each other to try and bury the hatchet, or perhaps maybe they'll have a match together where they'll see if they can be on the same page against other people in AEW. I expect we'll get a trios match between the House of Black and Death Triangle now that we've got Rey Fenix back, and I do think we could get a bit of a change around with the tag team championships as well. I think that Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus could drop those straps, which could cause Christian Cage to turn on Jungle Boy at last a full calendar year after it feels like it's been teased for the longest time. So I think we could get Cage against Jungle Boy, and I do think the new champions could end up being Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks of Team Taz. That would be my prediction at this point, because they want a title shot, and of course we have had the stare down as well between Sting and Starks, so I think we could get Hobbs and Starks against Sting and Darby Allin for the tag titles. Just my feeling, but that's what I think the card could look like. Let me know what matches you want to see at Double or Nothing in the comments below. Next question comes from Non-Stop Wrestling Chat. Who would you like to see be the next AEW champion after Page, and why? Great question, this one. And when I've been asked this before, I've always said MJF, just purely because I think as the dastardly heel, I think it would be great to see him in a program against Hangman Adam Page, the sort of millennial cowboy. I just think that MJF as well, his contract is up in 2024, and that's no secret. I think it would be great to put the strap on him sometime soon, so he's not like the top guy when his contract is about to expire, and then he may go to the other side, because I think that would be quite catastrophic for AEW. But at the same time, what I would say as well is that I listened to On The Mark Wrestling podcast recently. Shout out to them as well. They do terrific work on their YouTube channel. Go and subscribe to them if you haven't already. They were talking recently about the idea of CM Punk winning the championship. The comeback story. The fact that it'd be a big deal. He comes back to wrestling after 7 years, wins the championship at Double or Nothing, and what a big deal it would be. And I think they're totally right about that, because if to elaborate it further, I mean, the show is called Double or Nothing. It's betting on yourself to come back. Has he still got it? He's given that big speech in front of the fans. He came back for them, but he's also come back to win the gold. He's done all these different programs to come back in and to win the championship, and arguably is probably the most marketable name along with Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley in the company. CM Punk probably could add a bit of revenue. It would be a big deal for the company for CM Punk to win the championship. We've gone with what was that decision when the company first started, and Chris Jericho winning the championship, and then we moved along to Jon Moxley to get AEW on its feet. The last couple of champions, Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page, yeah, they're big in their own right, but at the same time, sometimes you need to move, to get the needle to move, to go in the right direction with ratings and interest, you need to put the title on its biggest names in the company, and CM Punk arguably is one of them. Especially when talking from a casual standpoint, of course, you know, the biggest names in the company, you still have got your Omegas, Pages and MJFs, but when you talk about to a worldwide audience that are known outside of wrestling fans, CM Punk is still known by outsiders, just like Jericho is, Moxley, Danielson. Those names have probably got more weight with them other than the other ones. So that's why I'm saying, you know, CM Punk would be a bigger name to win the championship at this stage. My major flaw against this is that it would make me feel that Hangman Page's title reign completely was unsuccessful. Now, he's been unlucky. He's been off TV, off Dynamite last week due to COVID, so hopefully he makes a speedy recovery and returns very, very quickly. But him versus Punk could be a match that defines Hangman Page's championship run, because in my opinion, Hangman needs to win it, and if he wins it as a good rivalry against CM Punk, who's just come off a great rivalry with MJF, I do feel that personally, Hangman Adam Page could be looked at more positively with his championship reign going into All Out, and when he eventually loses the title, whoever he loses it to. But I wouldn't be surprised if CM Punk was to win the gold. It was a great point that was made up there, and it does make a lot of logical sense when you do think about it. So CM Punk could be the one, and then perhaps CM Punk could then lose the belt to MJF later in the year, with that actual rivalry being revisited. Because, well, although it seems nice that CM Punk got the win in that rivalry, MJF is kind of that heel that gets the wins and usually is very, very well protected. So in a way, it could kind of make sense if MJF was to win the belt off CM Punk rather than beating Hangman Adam Page. It's certainly very interesting how it's going to be going forward. I'm still going to stick with my answer of MJF, but the more I think about it, the next few weeks on Dynamite and Rampage are going to be very telling on whether CM Punk could actually be the one who dethrones Hangman Adam Page at Double or Nothing. Next question coming from FAF Wrestling. Who else would you have MJF pay to face Wardlow? Great question, this one. So far, MJF has paid The Butcher and Lance Archer, and to no avail either. He said this week that the person he's going to bring in, well, you can't teach that, and he's 7 feet tall. W. Morrissey from Impact Wrestling. That Forbidden Door is opening quite thoroughly this week with Impact. Of course, Deanna Praza will be on the show as well to unify the ROH Women's World Championship against Mercedes Martinez. I think Martinez is going to pick up the W, by the way. But yeah, W. Morrissey will be the opponent this week for Wardlow, if you go by the clues that have been given, and Wardlow will overcome him. But who else will MJF pay to put in that position? Who I would like to see? Well, with Forbidden Door coming up, I'd like to see someone from New Japan be brought in for a show. Certainly before, a hired gun that was brought in was Jeff Cobb previously. I certainly think that would be a great dream match to see Wardlow against Jeff Cobb, although now Jeff Cobb is in a much higher prominent position in New Japan than what he was previously when he was brought into AEW against Jon Moxley, if I'm not mistaken, a number of years ago. Of course, now Jeff Cobb being a part of the United Empire along with Will Ospreay's group. But another alternative that could be a big dude that could come in could be Jonah. Now, I believe that his ties of Impact Wrestling called the 411 Mania are complete, so I don't think he's got any more obligations of Impact going forward at the moment, and I believe he's going to concentrate more on New Japan. So this could be a great way to promote Forbidden Door and bring Jonah in for a show, because Jonah is a big, impressive dude in the ring, and him against Wardlow could be a pretty impressive match as well. So there are a couple of names that I certainly would be interested in seeing. Please let me know who you'd like to see face Wardlow in the comments below. Next question comes from the Bama Slammer Wrestling Podcast. At this point in the Roman Reigns saga, who would you rather see him lose the title to if it were to happen this year? Drew McIntyre at the September UK pay-per-view in Cardiff, which of course has been awfully named Clash at the Castle, but that's my opinion on that. Or Cody Rhodes at maybe either SummerSlam or Royal Rumble. Fantastic question, that one there, and sort of a question you would ask on your This or That series. And speaking of This or That on the Bama Summer Wrestling Podcast, go and check out the most recent one that was released on his YouTube channel, a Smacked Raw YouTube channel. Go and subscribe to him because I was a special guest on that series. A lot of fun topics we went through, and Discus Larry was another special guest on that episode as well. So a lot of household names there that of course are used to being on this channel. So go and support Bama Dave. It was a lot of fun to be a part of that. But going back to your question then, in a This or That scenario, Drew McIntyre at the UK pay-per-view or Cody Rhodes at a SummerSlam or at a potential Royal Rumble event. Now, if it could have been at the UK pay-per-view, that's the option I would have gone down. But we've seen now that Drew McIntyre looks to be inserted with Roman Reigns now. So it looks like that this is going to happen pre-SummerSlam because we've got the 6-man tag team match that's now been made for WrestleMania Backlash, which, let's be fair, makes absolutely zero sense whatsoever now that we had the title unification match completely thrown away. I'm guessing that's going to be now put over to Hell in a Cell instead, but it looks like that potentially then Roman and Drew could be the singles program that goes forward afterwards, perhaps even to a point where we get that Hell in a Cell or perhaps even at Money in the Bank. So I've got a feeling that Drew is no longer going to be the one, and I think we are going to get Drew McIntyre against the boxer Tyson Fury at the UK event in Cardiff. That's going to be my prediction now. So I guess really if I look at things logically, I think Cody Rhodes would be the answer, would be the one. I do still think SummerSlam could be too soon, but if you're talking in the next 12 months, maybe Royal Rumble time could be a lot of fun. I want a marathon, not a sprint for this Cody Rhodes storyline. Perhaps Cody gets the shot at SummerSlam, loses first time round, and then manages to get himself together. And if you had my real wish, I'd have him do it at WrestleMania, but certainly Royal Rumble would be a good shout as well. So yeah, for me, I will pick Cody Rhodes of that because Drew McIntyre is being inserted here, well, maybe not far too early into the championship picture, but if it's going to be the full-on program of him and Roman now, he's not going to be one coming out on top. And I just feel at the moment that the momentum with the crowd, the audience, I think we're pushing for Cody more. Elijah Washington with our next question now. What do you think is going to happen on Raw since the Bloodline is back? Do they unify all the belts, or was this Sonya Deville's plan to get Adam Pearce fired by having Paul Heyman say that you better do this 6-man tag team match or you'll get fired? In a way, I'd love Sonya Deville to be a part of this story in a certain way because it certainly would take a lot of the heat off of her because she's been abusing her power by trying to get a women's championship opportunity. So that would be a good twist if they could make that work in continuity, but unfortunately, I don't think WWE is going to do that. I still would love the storyline where Sonya Deville is the GM of one show and Adam Pearce was the GM of another. I still think that would be a fun storyline as well, but I don't think that's what's happening. I just think Paul Heyman said, look, we're going to go down this avenue instead. But for me, it personally makes absolutely no sense whatsoever because Roman wanted those championships unified, and he's sort of seen the Usos go to Raw for the last number of weeks. We've seen the back and forth. We went to get the contract signed in, and all of a sudden, it's been completely thrown out of the window. All of that storyline, all of that build, it makes no sense at all. But one thing you said, which would make sense now if it's done on Raw tonight, or if it's done on SmackDown, and it would not be in Roman's interest, it would be in perhaps Drew's interest and perhaps even RK Bro's interest, is to put all the belts on the line because all of a sudden this would be an upgrade to what we had before, because we have seen RK Bro against the Usos before. It's happened on weekly TV of Raw and SmackDown. We've seen it on the Survivor Series last year. It still was being built really, really well. It was a big time deal match, but if we have where we have the 6-man tag team match and all the gold is on the line, that would be really exciting because let's say that one of Riddle or Drew or Randy gets the pin, then they are the unified champion as well. It's not the fact that Drew just would automatically win the championship. That person becomes the World Heavyweight Champion. So it even throws question marks into the babyface team of who could get the pinfall. So there's a lot of different dynamics that would make that a lot of fun. And I really hope that that is brought in because it would save this so much, because otherwise we've just got a 6-man tag and it's just an attraction match when we were built up where the tag team division actually meant something. And it just goes to show deep down that the tag team division in WWE really doesn't mean anything, because they didn't really believe it was strong enough to headline this show. So that's going to be my opinion on it, but hopefully that unification stipulation will be brought in to annoy Roman Reigns. That will be the way it can save it, in my opinion. Next question comes from Jamie Holmes saying, for you, what was the most surprising release he'd say Persia Prota or Dexter Lumis. They were both in a storyline where Indy and Persia were competing over who had the best partner, Indy Hartwell with Dexter Lumis, and of course Persia Prota with Duke Hudson, and the men had recently formed a team. Yeah, I mean, they completely gutted that storyline. I've got no idea where they're going to go with that from there. It almost feels that Duke Hudson and Indy Hartwell need time off TV as well. It's completely ruined that storyline. But I guess in hindsight, you look and say, well, it made no sense they were given the tag team title match straight away either. So I guess maybe the writing was on the wall sooner than what we realised. But a number of those releases were surprising for me, but certainly those two were high up there in my opinion. Malcolm Bivens was a big surprise for me. Now, of course, it did come out he wasn't going to re-sign with the company, but I just thought that the guy was very good at building and making new stars. So for me personally, that was a big surprise. I think Dakota Kai was a surprise in a way, but she'd had many dark matches and wasn't called up to Raw SmackDown. Apparently now she wasn't going to re-sign with the company either, so I guess that adds together. And Haaland as well, Parker Bordeaux, everyone think it'll be the next Brock Lesnar, turned out to be the next Gene Snitsky unfortunately, but still was a big surprise in itself. A number of those were surprising, but to pick one or most surprised out of the lot, I think I'm going to agree with you. Just because of that storyline, it really destroys all the momentum of what they had going with Indy Hartwell and Duke Hudson. Not that all of it was necessarily positive momentum, but definitely the direction of that storyline, it's completely derailed from this point onwards. But if you want my reaction to the NXT releases, then I've got a full podcast available on the channel for you right now. I was joined by a special guest, NXT Steve. We talk about each release in depth as well and what we think potentially could be their next destination as well. We do hope that all wrestlers do land on their feet and do find work very, very soon. Next question comes from Martin Lorenzo Carrillo. Who from all the NXT call-ups from 2021 to 2022 do you see becoming world champion this year, and how would you book it to happen? Really interesting question, this one, because looking through the WWE roster page, I don't see many of them becoming world champions, certainly not in this calendar year anyway. If you look at the people that have got perhaps potential to do so, the first one that stands out to me is someone that's already become a champion recently, which is Theory, I think becoming US champion. Of course, he was caught up at the draft in 2021, and of course, he's literally being groomed as a future star. Of course, being Vince's pet project, if you want the chosen one going forward. I think Money in the Bank is a great suitable way to get him to that platform to begin with, because Theory could be something to be a long-term Money in the Bank holder. I don't think you necessarily have to do it overnight, and I think for someone like him, a WrestleMania or night after WrestleMania will be a great place to cash in and win the championships. That's certainly possibly a way that I would book Theory. Raquel Rodriguez is one on SmackDown that's definitely one of the newer ones that's been caught up. I think definitely has bags of potential. I just feel in the early stages of this babyface gimmick that she's got, that doesn't quite connect for me at all. I think that she would work much better as a badass, whether it's face or heel, but a badass, you know, big mummy cool, what we saw in NXT. This sort of like smiling, squeaky clean babyface thing just isn't going to work for me. So the way I would book it, and this is just me personally, I would actually have had her as Sonya Deville's bodyguard. I know it probably seems cliche to go down that avenue, but certainly would make a lot of sense in my personal opinion. Having protection for Sonya Deville's decisions, can go out and do matches on behalf of Sonya Deville, gives her a prominent role on WWE TV very, very quickly, an important role at that. She could be the one that could build herself to become a challenger for the championship against the babyface that Sonya Deville doesn't like, or she breaks away and big turns babyface, wins the Royal Rumble, and then goes on to win the championship at WrestleMania. Certainly could be ways that I would book it if I was to do so. And the last one that comes to my mind is Gunther. Now, Gunther has had a couple of matches, squash matches at this point. For me, the best way to book Gunther is just simply dominate every superstar, every level that he goes up the ladder. Just dominate each and every superstar. Once he gets in with the big boys like the Sheamuses, the Drew McIntyres, just make sure he wins. And when he does that, he'll be a viable challenger that way. That's simply all you need to do with him. He is powerful. He's got a presence. He's got the look of a champion and the main event talent. You just need to, make him go through the roster. It's quite simple as that. GG on wrestling. Another great wrestling YouTuber. Our next question now: who are your top 5 active wrestlers? Can be from any promotion. Awesome question, this one. I really like this, and I've got to say, it's really hard to narrow it down to 5, but I'm going to do my best for you right now, and I'm going to start with my personal favourite, AJ Styles. AJ's still my favourite to this day at this moment, because he always puts on a great performance, a great match. You can always get a 5-star out of AJ when you need to, unless it's against Omos, but I mean, who can out of Omos, let's be fair. But yeah, the last sort of year or so of AJ Styles' career has been a bit interesting. He's had that pairing with Omos, and now he's in what's, an up and down storyline with Edge and Damian Priest at this particular moment, but when it comes to in-ring, AJ Styles, he always delivers. I always enjoy an AJ Styles match, and for me personally, I really hope he gets one big push at the top before he does retire, because he's had an incredible 20-year career, and even though perhaps you'd say right now he's not doing things that we turn around and say is good storyline wise as perhaps what he was doing a few years ago, or perhaps not pushed as high up at the card as when he was champion, but still for me AJ, he always delivers in ring, and still for me is a personal favourite. That just seems to be a mainstay for me. At number 2, Roman Reigns, because, well, he's head of the table, the tribal chief. Everything Reigns does feels extremely important. When you watch him in WWE, anything built around Roman is big time. And he just has that sort of feel for me watching WWE, that he's the closest thing we've got to sort of like these big, one-off stars that we've had in the past. And Roman, he's key as well, building that next big top babyface of the future. They're going to have to go through him to get to that position. So for me, Roman Reigns right now, his importance has to put him in the top 5. I'm always interested in what Roman is doing in WWE, whether it's match-wise and story-wise. His current character for me just really does dominate. Bianca Belair is going to be the next one for me. She's just a star, literally, in ring, the way she presents herself. She's got that star power. She's got that it factor to carry the women's division for years. Had the best match at WrestleMania this year, in my personal opinion, against Becky Lynch. And it's great to see that she's got the Raw Women's Championship. She's the top of that division once again. I'm looking forward to seeing what program she's going to go going through the summer season. Next choice for me has to be AEW's Bryan Danielson. I mean, since Danielson has joined AEW, how many classic matches has this guy done? He's been on absolute clinic, arguably the best in-ring wrestler in the world right now. I really hope that it's him versus Okada when it comes to Forbidden Door, by the way. Can you imagine just that dream match? It just would be absolutely spectacular. But now you've got the Blackpool Combat Club as well. It seems to be like the coolest thing in wrestling to watch at the moment as well. So for me, Bryan Danielson takes the number 4 spot. I'm sure that's probably not a surprise to many. And my last selection has to be the virtuosa Deonna Purrazzo. I mean, she has just been the champ, one of the best technical wrestlers in the world. Recently she was the AAA Reina de Reinas champion. She still is the Ring of Honor Women's World Champion, probably till this Wednesday, where she probably loses it to Mercedes Martinez. And then of course as well, she's been a multiple time knockouts champion as well for long, lengthy reigns. So Deonna Purrazzo for me has been outstanding since leaving WWE. I've thoroughly enjoyed watching her story, the way she's progressed and the way that her stock has risen. Literally, the sky is the limit for what she wants to do in the future. Whether she wants to become a multiple-time knockouts champion for more years to come in Impact Wrestling, or she wants to try something in another company at some point, she's definitely got my support all the way. So that's my top 5 for you there right now. Then AJ Styles at number 1, Roman Reigns, Bianca Belair, Bryan Danielson, and Deonna Purrazzo. Next question comes from Noob and Co. Who will take the NWA Women's title from Camille? Will it be Natalia Markova, Genocide, Killian King, and now Angelina Love, or Mickie James? Great question, this one, because Camille has been dominating since becoming NWA Women's Champion. Now, I must admit, I don't really follow NWA as much as I did before, but every time I do, I see her in the ring and she just dominates. I think that, again, another female talent, the sky is the limit for her, and I do think one day she'll probably be in AEW or even WWE, but I wouldn't be surprised at some point if we get to see Camille versus Jade Cargill, like the battle of the undefeated women. I think that would be pretty cool, if it's through the Forbidden Door or however they want to do it. But looking at this with the championship here, a host of names you've thrown there. I mean, obviously you've got some experience there with the likes of Angelina Love there, with Mickie James there as well, and you mentioned some up and comers as well, Killian King, Genocide, and as well Natalia Markova. I think Markova would probably be your choice if I'm pretty familiar with your Twitter feed, but for me, I can see both sides of the coin of building a new star, a fresh star, but also having your experienced names there that have been there and done it before. Mickie James definitely would be a hot favourite to do so if you were to ask my personal opinion, but Killian King could be another shout as well. She was doing some great things when she was with AEW, but more on dark and dark elevation. Now she's had a chance to break out more in the independents and stuff, and now she's doing more of NWA. I think she could definitely be a realistic shout, so that could be one definitely to keep an eye on if you were to ask my personal opinion. We're heading to the Underground Temple for our last question this week. Do you see WWE selling up, and when do you think they will sell up? Their prediction is going to be between 2024 and 2026, and by 2030 they'll be on the verge of how WCW ended up. Really an interesting question, this last one, because honestly, I mean, for me, I still find it hard to believe that Vince McMahon will ever sell WWE without actually still having some form of creative control and big decision making done through him and through Nick Khan. I don't fully see the sale happening, so that's why I'm going to stick out and say I'm not sure it will happen. But what I think will happen between now and then, WWE arguably in places is already booked like a WCW creatively when you watch the television screens. There were definitely some Raws that I watched probably in 2021 when I thought this was worse than the worst days of WCW, but yet WWE seems to find ways of having their best financial years at this point they've ever had. Forget everything else, you know, they've got the deals with Fox, they've got a great deal with USA Network, they've done the sale of the network to Peacock, which of course got them another $1 billion in, and they're now starting to sell the network off in other destinations as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happened for the folk in the UK at some point in the next 12 months, either where they get a big load of money, whether it's someone like an Amazon Prime or someone like that will come in, a Disney will come and take WWE from that side of things. But what will happen with the actual product and creative control itself? Interesting that you make that proposition, because who knows, maybe one day it might, and in someone else's hands, would it do better or would it do worse? I think it goes with, we know the devil we know, but at the same time, I do think a lot of the ideas that we get currently with WWE, Vince does have his finger on the pulse with certain things, but definitely it's way off on others. I do think that if you had someone like a Triple H in control, I think WWE would be a more watchable, more entertaining product. Wouldn't necessarily have the star power, the viewership and stuff like that. That's a very good question. That's what ties really into this, because it's all about the stars that are made in WWE, which you can turn around and say, they're not really making loads of them either at the moment, but they have Roman Reigns. That is a big star. And Roman's job right now, he is to be at the pedestal, at the top on his own, is to bring other people up to his level. And of course, those superstars have got to want to put in the hard work as well. And we've got some of them through the developmental system of NXT, your Braun Breakers, your Carmelo Hayes of this world. So you have got people that perhaps can get there eventually, but it's how they're going to be booked, how they're going to be portrayed. That side of things will be very interesting. But when it comes to a sale, I'm going to stick my neck out and say, I still don't think it's going to happen. But hey, I'm willing to be proven wrong. Anything can happen in the world of wrestling. We've seen so many crazy things happen throughout the years. So maybe it will happen one day. But I think Vince will be in the chair until his final days. I don't see him giving it up. And we'll see after that what happens. But interesting question. Really is a fascinating one. I'd be interested to know people's thoughts in the comments below. But that's all we've got time for this week here for AskSCW. Thank you everyone for your questions as always. Make sure to keep an eye on the channel this week. WrestleMania Backlash predictions will be dropping, and right now as well, NXT Spring Breaker predictions are already on the channel, along with my reaction to the NXT releases. Of course, that was joined by NX Steve for that podcast as well. Make sure to go and check that out. And a big thank you once again for Bama Dave having me on his channel, the Bama Slammer Wrestling Podcast. Of course, it was this or that show. It was a lot of fun to be a part of, so make sure to go and check that video out and do go and support it as it comes up on the side of your screen right now with a couple of my videos as well. But that's all from me. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Thanks for watching AskSCW as always. Have yourselves a great day.